I was getting to a point where, like I said, we had all this retirement savings,
no liquid,
but if like a $4,000, repair came, I would have probably had to put it on a credit card. And I hated that feeling.
Hello, and welcome to Financials Podcast, Future Rich. I am Barbara Ginty, and I'm a CFP, and I am here with my guest today, Jill. Hi, Jill.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. I'm a fan.
Wonderful. It's always nice to meet somebody who's listening to the podcast, and that's not my mother.
I love it. No, I love it.
So why don't you fill in our listeners? So I know that you're in the New York metro area, and you are married, you have 3 kids, but why don't you give us a little more of your background?
Sure. Okay. So I'm not originally from the New York area. I'm born and raised in the Midwest. And about 18 years ago, we moved to the New York area for my husband's job. I am currently a stay-at-home mom. I have been since the birth of my 3rd child 14 years ago. Prior to that, I worked in corporate America for 2 Fortune 100 companies. So I have experience in both. I started out in IT, and then I kind of worked my way into some HR technology, still a technology, but HR management positions. And I have an MBA. My husband and I both have advanced degrees, went to school. Kind of, it was our dream to we both come from very blue collar backgrounds, lower middle class backgrounds. We're both the first people in our family to go to college. So wow. We were very, very striving, we were very ambitious, both of us. And so when we got the opportunity to move to New York for my husband's job, we took him up on that. And we've been here for 18 years and it's been great. And like I said, 14 years ago, when I had my 3rd child, I decided to step out of the workforce, kind of always with the plan to go back. Like my plan was.
How was the decision? Like, how was your decision-making process for that?
Yeah, it was interesting because even up till the point we moved to New York, I was the breadwinner in our family. So wow. I always made more money, just even like right out of college. And then when we moved to New York, my husband and I were making comparable incomes, but definitely that move from the Midwest to the New York was a shock to our financial system.
The cost of living difference?
Yes. And it was also in 2007 that we moved. So right before the financial crisis. So thankfully the best decision we ever made, we sold our house in the Midwest. In the Midwest for a loss, actually, because it had already hit in the Midwest.
No.
And when we
that's good for our listeners to hear.
Yeah.
I think you probably as a listener notice that they get asked a lot about real estate, and the attitude I think more recently is it's a sure thing that you.
Yeah. Oh no. So we had our first home that we bought and sold like right when we got married. We did make money on, and we put that into our second home, and that was going to not necessarily our dream home, but definitely could have been the home that we raised our family in. And we lived in that house for 9 years and sold it for $20,000 less than we paid.
Terrible. Not terrible.
I know. But. Right. But we had taken, we had some equity in it, but we had taken some equity to fix it up. And so we literally walked away with like no money. Like my husband was on a reload package. So thankfully, like the company was like covered like real estate fees and stuff. So we basically just walked away. Like it was nice. We basically rented there for, for 9 years. So coming to New York at that stage of life, and then seeing the housing prices here, which were like not even double, like triple what our house was worth is what we were going to have to pay. The best decision we made in 2007 was to rent. So we actually rented. Yeah.
Rented, which is amazing. Yeah. Because the housing prices there fell off a cliff.
They did, yes. And so obviously we rented, I think, for 7 years. Even our rent came down in that time,
My rent came down, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, because even the rent that we paid when we first moved to New York was like, double what we were paying for our mortgage in the Midwest. Yeah. So over that time, so thankfully, we were, again, I always tell people we were like bleeding cash at that time. Like here we were in our mid 30s, basically starting over. Like we thought we had like achieved some financial stability. And then we came here and we had to pay for childcare. Our twins were 2.5 at the time. We were just like literally just bleeding
Bleeding
cash.
money.
Yeah. But thankfully, over the years, obviously, my
And
husband started.
no one lost their job during that and during the housing crisis because a lot of people lost their
No,
jobs then.
no. Thankfully, my husband's job was actually very secure for what he was doing, and I was able to maintain my job. Which again, I was working for a large company, working remotely from home. So actually, my job didn't even
Oh
change when
wow.
I moved. When I moved from the Midwest to New York, I was already working from home. Back before it was cool to work from home.
That's before anyone worked from home. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working from home. I worked from home a long time before that became kind of the thing to do. So yeah, so we were like literally just trying to catch up. So we spent like those first 6 to 7 years we lived here just catching up. Finally, we're able to housing prices came down, so we were able to settle on a place that we wanted to live, and we bought a house. And thankfully, my husband, he jumped. He did what everyone says, like he moved jobs a lot and had more opportunity here for his line of work. And he was able to increase his salary to the point where actually once my youngest was about to go in, no more daycare expenses. So it was right around the time I took a leave of absence from my job at first.
Okay.
So I took a long leave of absence. Then I actually did go back to work around the time my youngest was like 3. I worked for about a year and a half, and it just got to be too much. I mean, without 3 kids, no family
I was saying
support.
no family support.
I mean, I did have a flexible job and that I worked from home, but I just kind of felt like I
But you still
was
have to work.
drowning. Yeah, that was the thing. And I had one of those very demanding jobs to where, it's a global company. So I'd be like, driving carpools saying, shut up, kids, I'm on a conference call, and it got to be a lot.
Right.
And at that point, we ran the numbers and my husband's career was taking off. And we got to this point where I decided to stop. And it was kind of like the plan was, well, um, I'll go back in a few years when my youngest is older. And it was actually part of our college savings plan was we had been saving for college. We hadn't fully funded college. However, I'll go back to work when my kids go to college.
Go to
And
college
yeah,
and then
yeah,
we'll cash flow college.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
That was the plan. And now my twins are juniors in high school, in college. And I've joked that my job has more been about just trying to manage our money better so that we're still able to find the money to pay for college.
Yeah.
And so far, we've been able to do that. Um, so yeah, so
That's
that's
amazing.
where we are.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so you had initially thought when you took a step back from the workforce because yeah, if you have a demanding job, it doesn't matter if you're doing it at home or in the office. I guess you're saving on the commute to the office, right? That's
right,
your time saving. But
right,
if you're taking care of 3 kids, there's really no time saving
right. Yeah,
there.
and I was still spending money on someone helping with the kids, and I don't want to say I never was fulfilled in my career, but it definitely wasn't my passion. Like I kept, again, I worked for big companies, really, really big companies, and I just was looking for more. And I wanted to take some time to try to figure it out. Now here I am 14 years later and still haven't quite figured it out. And that's starting to be, so now I'm at this strange point where I do feel like I need to, kind of find out what's next.
Yeah, you want to do something. And just how old are you and your husband? Just so for our listeners.
So I'm 53 and my husband is 56.
Okay. So you stepped out of the workforce around 40.
Yeah, it was 20. Yeah, right around I had my youngest right before I turned 40.
Okay.
So yeah, I went back, like I said, I went
You
back a
went
little
back
bit
and
in
then yeah,
there,
so it hasn't
but
really been the whole time. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And I did like a part-time job, one couple summers, but that's, yeah, basically stepped out of the, earning workforce and saving for retirement and all of that when I was.
But you were in the workforce at a pretty high level pretty early.
Yes, right out of college. I was hired right out of undergrad at 21 at a large company. And actually, that company, this is again shows my age, back in the good old days, I worked for that company while I got my MBA, and that company paid for my MBA in full.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I worked there for 7 years. And then once I got my MBA, I didn't owe them anything, like literally
Amazing.
6 months, 6 weeks after I graduated, I gave my notice because I got recruited through my MBA. Yeah, I got recruited through my MBA with a bigger company and I got a raise. And so, yeah,
That's amazing. So you had
Yeah.
24.
So I started, so I have almost, I like to say I do have a 20-year career,
So
you
that's
know.
what I was getting at is that
Yeah.
you started young and because you worked through your MBA. A lot of people take time off like, since you
Yeah.
worked through your MBA. You
Yeah.
did 20 years in corporate
Yes.
America.
Yes.
And that's, and you know what I think that what I see a lot, at least in practice, is not everyone goes to work at 21 in a corporate
Right.
role, like in a
Right.
career where you're doing a 401k and you're really on that earning track. Because a lot of people are trying to figure out themselves in their 20s and like don't get
Yes.
into a career path at their in their 30s.
I will say again, and this is a little bit more about my background and some of the kind of psychological aspects around money, is I did grow up in a, my dad was actually self-employed in a very, he ran a very small business. And I will say he was self-employed, however, not very successfully self-employed. So like I grew up with this mindset and view of like, business owners struggle, right?
Yeah.
There were times where we didn't have health insurance, and there were times where we were borrowing money from my grandparents, and like, I looked at that as scary, as owning your own business was scary back then. And I was like, I'm going to school, I'm getting a degree, I'm going to go. I mean, it literally, it again shows my age a little bit, but this is kind of where we were back then, which was I want to work for a company
It's
with cushy
stable.
benefits,
Yeah.
stable retirement. My first company that I worked for did actually have a pension.
I was going to ask
um,
you if you had yeah, a pension.
I
Yeah.
ended up, because I only worked there 7 years, I did cash that out
And move it into
and move it
retirement.
into my retirement. But my second company I worked for also had a pension. But while I was there 6 years, they were like, yep, it's done now. No more
They stopped funding
pensions.
it. Yeah.
They stopped funding it. So that was kind of the writing on the wall for my husband and I, which was like, okay, those days are gone. I mean, yes, we work for big companies. Yes, we have some of these, like, we have the 401k, we have these benefits, we have this some security. However, there's the days of big pensions are gone. And
They
we've got to
changed.
fund this ourselves. Yeah, they're changing and we've got to fund this ourselves. So yeah, so that was some of my mindset, and I just that's what I wanted. And then but there that comes with trade off too. Now there's a part of me that's like, I really need to go start a business, like that, now the flexibility and the autonomy that comes with being a business owner is intriguing to me now.
Yeah, that's interesting that you grew up with it because I do know that, if you see somebody owning a business and it can be really hard and you can really struggle and it's not always successful, right? The
Hmm.
statistics around small businesses can be quite scary. And so that makes sense if you saw that and you're like, this is not what I want. Like, I don't want to struggle. I want to know that I have health insurance. I want to know that I'm getting a paycheck every
Yes.
2 weeks, right? That it's going to hit direct deposit. Because, like, as a
Yes.
business owner, you don't have all that stability. And so if it works, it's great. But if it's not working, it's a real struggle. It can be really
Right.
hard.
Right. Right. And so like I said, all I wanted was, I was like very determined as a young child, get a college degree, go work for a big company. Period. Like that was my goal.
On a different situation than the one I'm
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yes. Exactly.
I'm sure there was times you had birthdays and it was like, okay, well, we don't have any money for a birthday.
Right. I mean, it was, I mean, yeah, my grandparent, I mean, it wasn't, I don't want to make it seem like it was this big struggle, but I watched the struggle, and not like, I mean, we always had food on the table and I was always clothed and we were always housed, I know those in themselves right there are
Right.
privileges,
Big.
but it was that, the doctors, the dentists, thank God I didn't need braces, little things like that. Like,
Yeah, that you picked up on.
yeah, I picked up on for sure.
Yeah, that was like those were trade offs, right?
Right. And it was also a very like paycheck to paycheck, like, and I guess to also reiterate, like the concept of saving wasn't really a thing. Like everyone in my family just, they made money and they spent that money, period. Like there was no even retirement. Like, none of my grandparents had pensions or anything like that. Like they had their social security and that's what they lived on, with maybe a little bit of savings here or there. But like even that concept of saving for retirement wasn't
Was
something.
there. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of financial security.
Mm-mm. Yeah, or knowledge
Right.
or training, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so then you made the right decision. But yeah, you did 20 years, which,
Right.
depending on like when you talk to people, like when they get into roles, they do 20, 25, 30. Because a lot of people try to, not everyone, but a lot of people try to find themselves in their 20s, right? They try out
Yes.
different jobs.
Yeah.
They not bounce around, maybe isn't the right word, but they go into one industry, they don't really like it, or they take a year off between jobs. They do before they get really serious. But you were really serious about saving and growing your career
Right. And
from a long.
it's interesting because I'm now, I want my kids to do the opposite. because I don't feel like I took that time. I feel like I just was like, what makes money? That's what I'm going
Serious.
into,
Yeah.
period. Whether that was the right thing or not, I don't, if I look back, would I have made some decisions if I had that ability? I probably would have made some different decisions with what I ended up doing. But, here we are.
But your priority was security,
It
right?
was. It
And
was. Yeah.
so and that's what you went for. Okay, so then you took the step back. Your husband's career did really really well, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so he kept switching. He switched jobs to get higher
Mhm.
increases. And why don't we'll give the listeners an overview. So he's making about what now so far?
So he has a base salary and a bonus, and he
Okay,
gets stocks. His package, I think, is about it's a base of around 500,000
okay,
a year, and then he has like a 30% bonus that is usually paid. I guess it's never guaranteed, but
but
it does
usually
usually
does
get paid. And then he gets around $70,000 a year in company and restricted stock units.
okay, amazing.
So it's
Uh,
like seven. It comes out close to seven
yeah,
something.
around
Yeah.
700. And then you've both done a great job saving. Your IRA is around, I'll just round up, like around 750,000.
hmm
And
Mine.
then
That's my personal one.
that's
That's
your
that's my
personal.
two 401ks from my companies basically rolled together. Yeah.
And I will point out that's because you started so young.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're seeing that now. I'm watching that, and
Yeah.
I'll talk about that a little bit as to how that happened. But yeah.
Yeah. So starting young is such an advantage. I mean, I know
hmm
you could have probably done some other
I
things.
learned about compound interest many times in business school, but I'm now understanding it.
It
Yeah.
takes a while to see the
It does.
benefit.
It
It's
does.
it's I think that I talked to a young person today and I said that the way to build long-term wealth is it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
I
a
mean, I've already started. My children all have Roth IRAs now. Just am I,
amazing.
as young as possible because I'm like, just even if you're putting $50 a month in there, put it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because the compounding just makes such a big difference.
hmm
And then your husband has an IRA that's worth 1.2, and then he has another 401k that's approximately 775,000. And then I think this is a good idea, but you're starting to fund some you're starting to fund some non pre tax retirement as
Yes.
well.
Yes. That's where it kind of started to hit us. I mean, it's interesting because now that he's getting closer to that 59 and a half number, like I think there was always that like, oh wait, like obviously the nice thing about having after tax money is it's there, but we really can't touch it anytime soon, right? So plus being high earners, like
You
we're also
don't.
getting we're getting used to making this much money. That's obviously not enough to fund our current income,
Your
right?
current
So
income.
yeah.
Well, what I will say, it's like all about your net, right? Because right
Yes.
now you're living in a high cost of living area, right?
Right.
So your expenses are high. You're also in a high tax area,
Yes,
a lot
extremely.
of tax. And so normally what you want to look at for when you go plan for retirement is what are you actually living on? You also have a
Right.
lot of expenses because you're cash flowing college.
Yes, we are
So I was
right
going to
now.
ask, that was one of your big expenses is the
Yeah.
cash flow. And is that 100,000? That's 100,000 a year for
Yes, about
college?
right now. We managed to save over again, I think moving to New York, like those were we had started 529s when the twins were born. We started saving a little bit. Again, you never quite, I remember like, again, we were working with a financial advisor at a time. And I remember them telling us like at one point, like, in order to save for the two kids that you don't even have yet, like to have a full college tuition in their 529 when they start college, you need to start putting like $629 a month away right now. Like the kids weren't even born yet. And we were like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we were able to save, and by the time they did graduate, we had probably close to 2 years
Okay.
saved, at least a year and a half. We did actually borrow from our third child's 529.
Which you can do.
We did. We transferred that just because he's 4 years younger.
You have time.
We have 7 years younger actually, so we have time. So anyway, so yes, and because of my husband's job, we kind of knew like between the bonus, we
And the
can swing
stock.
that right
Yeah,
now.
you could swing it. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
cash flow it. Um, okay,
it's not
amazing.
fun though. It's not fun.
No. So that's why, like, even though your husband has a high salary, you have high tax, high cost of living, and
High expenses. Yeah,
high expenses,
right,
which you won't always have. So
right.
you're not living on 700.
No,
Not like
no.
and not
I
anywhere
mean, I
near.
feel like I am now, but we're not. When I do use like Monarch money. I have, so this is my thing over the last couple of years because I think we kind of were for a while there. Like, it does creep up. And next thing you know, you think, well, I don't have to think about this because we make so much. And then that kind of, again, instead of going back to work, I was like, how can I save enough? How can I save enough money? Which has kind of become my new job. I joke that I'm the CEO of my company, of my family, right? And
Yeah,
that's how I'm,
but if you
yeah,
were
doing that.
running a business making 700, somebody would need to run
Yeah,
the finances. So,
exactly,
right,
exactly.
because they're
Right,
material. It's a material amount of money, and you want to make sure it's
right,
going towards what your goals are. But wait,
right.
so talk to me about this. So you had a financial advisor who you met with the 529s, and you said you recently broke up with your
Yes.
financial advisor.
So I will say again, like I said, with no experience in what, no one in my family ever had a 401k or invested in the stock market. So when I went, one of the second company that I worked for used to offer us like $250 a year for financial planning, but they were tied into one of the big financial advisory firms. So we did develop a relationship with a financial advisor. It was assets under management. The fees were paid based on the amount of money. Again, I think, and here's where I kind of feel like I just always put my head in the sand about that. Like I didn't, I just kind of, first of all, when I first started working with them, it was because they were helping us with our 401k. They actually knew the company I was working for. So they helped me get set up my 401k at my current company. Plus, obviously, they were like, oh, you have these old 401ks, roll those over to us.
Yeah.
And we did do that. And so we were with them for a good, I would say, 20 years.
Oh wow, a long time.
And it was interesting because we met with them once a year, sometimes twice, and our portfolio was always growing. They were very helpful. But I will say the internet and the personal finance content that's out there right now is amazing. And I think, like, I mean, things like your podcast or whatever, but I think deep down, I always knew I was paying them somehow. Like, I mean, obviously they used to charge us like a flat fee of like $2,500 a year. They did charge us that
Besides the asset management fee.
and the asset management fee. And
Okay.
one day again, I follow a bunch of people on Instagram and people start talking about these financial advisors. And I didn't feel like I had a real financial kind of plan with them. It was more just like, here's, you know,
Management, more like
asset
here's
management of
your
these
portfolio.
assets, right? But one day I decided to actually, and I'm like, you know what, Jill? You have an MBA. Like, what are you actually paying them, in a year? And so I literally downloaded my statement, and found where the fees were hidden in that statement. Like, it's really, I don't want to say they weren't transparent. I mean, some of it's that I never asked either. Like,
Okay.
you know what
Okay.
I mean? It
Yeah.
just was kind of assumed. But when I looked at it and realized we were paying close to $20,000 a year, between the fees that were coming out
And then
and
the
and that
2,500.
the $2,500, which I think was going up to 3,000 because we were high, I was like, wait a minute, wait, for one meeting a year where they basically are telling me, let's move this to this. Like, it's almost like, and everything I'm seeing online is put your stuff in an ETF and let it sit there, right? And I'm like, we're in this stage of life where we're just growing assets,
You're
right?
just accumulating.
Yeah, we're just accumulating. So it kind of hit me. And again, back to, becoming the CEO of my family, and like, there's $20,000 I can get, there's towards, my salary, right? That we're
Right.
saving, even though we don't see it in our cash flow, it's not coming out of our retirement. So I actually did break up with them, and I do work with a CFP now. That's a flat fee. I paid her one charge to do our retirement plan, which we're just in the process of finishing that up. In fact, we're meeting with her soon. And again, it's so much more encompassing because it's involving insurance and our estate planning, and it includes our social security numbers, like all these things that the other place was not giving
Hadn't
us.
talked about.
No, they were just kind of like, oh, you figured that out. And anyway,
I think that's a
um,
really interesting point because I charge a fee, like a flat, like an asset under management fee. But I always tell people you only want to pay that if you're getting something,
right,
right? Like you have to be getting something. And there are certain parts of
right,
finance that are complex and that you're going to maybe want to outsource, right? You're going to want
right,
to pay for. But
And at
if
some
you're
point,
doing
I might want to do that. Like, I haven't ruled
right,
out that at some point, like, especially when we get into the stage of, drawing from our assets, but
yeah,
again, the woman that I'm working with now, the CFP, is a flat fee. It was one charge for the plan. And then she does do, it's like I can either pay her hourly, or she's got like all these different fee structures, which are much less than $20,000 a year, even if it's just quarterly to meet with her. And she just but now I'm getting more comfortable. I'm managing, I rolled it all into Fidelity. I'm the one making the trades where I need to move it
do it.
or
Yep.
whatever. So,
Yeah,
so
because
it's just
there's a
been more
lot
empowering.
more than investments, as you said. Like
Yes.
the Social Security is key, like the estate planning.
Yes.
As you get older, it gets more complex, and you
Right.
want to make sure that you're getting educated on it,
Right. And at
right?
some point, taxes obviously are going to be,
Mhm.
obviously, the fact that we're sitting on this pre-tax money.
Yes.
But so far, right now, she's in a position to help with that. It's just I'm the one actually doing the trading
Yeah,
at
you're the
this
one
point.
executing, which is
Yeah.
great, and that's usually how that goes, right? They'll give you the
Yeah.
roadmap, and then they hand
Yeah.
it to you and say, "Okay, now you can execute." And yeah, you're perfectly capable of executing it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's been, and it's also led to my kind of I don't want to say obsession, but more like my interest in personal finance. Like, again, I think some of the like shame around money that I had growing up, or like almost like ew, like investments are for, finance bros or whatever. And in fact, I used to joke that I have a fluffy MBA. Like I used to tell people, oh, I have a fluffy MBA, which, I mean, I didn't take all the extra finance courses, but I still had to take finance courses and pass them. And I do understand it. So
Yeah.
it's been a real area of growth for me. I will say that.
I think that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
to educate yourself on it and to have a hand in it. I mean, obviously, I think it's super important for women to be
Right.
educated and involved in their finances. I think it's super important because women end up statistically managing their own money at
Right.
some point,
Right.
and
Right.
you don't want it to be at 85.
Right. Well, and I will say it has almost become like a passion project for me. Like, as I have a daughter, I mean, obviously both my twins, one's a boy, one's a girl, but both of them, I want them, I don't want them to feel like it's so intimidating. And I do kind of feel like, even though I thought I had a great personal relationship with that financial advisor that I was with for 20 years, and, we could sit and chat forever. Like, we were great friends, but she did like to kind of complicate finance, to the point where I almost felt like I didn't understand it, right?
Yeah.
You throw all these Morningstar reports at me and, blah, 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 and it's just like, it got overwhelming, where really it doesn't have to be. It can be very
No,
simple.
no,
Right.
it doesn't have to be. I always compare it to kind of medical stuff.
Right.
Like, the
Yes.
name
Yeah.
for a Z-Pack is not Z-Pack.
Right.
Go
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
your doctor. They
Right.
can talk to you in all of the jargon that they learn in medical school, and you'll have
Totally.
no idea that you just have an
Exactly.
infection and need a Z-Pack. But like if they talk in their language,
Yes.
because every
Exactly.
industry has their language, if they talk to you in
Yes.
their language,
Yep.
you won't have a clue what's happening. And the
Yeah.
same thing can happen with finance. And I do think that it can really be broken down to be understandable.
Yes.
And it should be. It's
It should
your
be.
money. You
Exactly.
should understand it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's been the biggest, eye opener for me in the last, like I said, and this is really just like the last like 4 or 5 years probably, that I think because I will say, like, and this is going to sound horrible, and this is one of the reasons why I was afraid to come on your podcast. I I was, we were making this much money, and I was still kind of living paycheck to paycheck. Like, not really, because I had all this retirement money, right? So like I knew this money was here, but like my actual, like the way I was managing our money, and we have this added complication in that we get this bonus,
Once
we
a
get this
year.
lump, so it's a big amount of money that comes in. And I still kind of had that same mentality of like my upbringing, which was a lot of times that bonus would have been spent before it got in. Like, you know what I mean? I would, like, starting in like November and December, I'd start saying, oh, well, the bonus is coming, the bonus is
We
coming.
have this coming in.
And next thing you know, the bonus would come, and I'd have to like shell it out to all these, credit cards that I'd run up in just that couple of months, like
Knowing
always
you
zero
can.
percent or whatever. And I was like, what am I doing? And that security, like, it still like felt like I was, living paycheck to paycheck. And so my goal in these last few years is to stop, has been to stop that, is to kind of, open my eyes again to it all, and and start trying to build up on some of those basics again, and not spending
And
it
so
all.
what so the shift was just seeing that the money was coming in and immediately being spent to stuff, and it wasn't exactly serving your goals. Was that really the mindset?
Yeah, and I think especially as I got closer to college and it got closer to now, I really want to start thinking about retirement. So one of the things that I started doing, and I think this is now my second year of this, and I heard this on a podcast, and I highly recommend it to everybody, is I literally on the first of every month I have a spreadsheet that does my net worth, like where I actually it kind of forces me to like look at the balance on all of my accounts, includes everything, every little piece of stock we have here, every little savings account or whatever, my mortgage, what is my mortgage, what do I actually owe, and then what's coming in, what's going out. And so it's just a net worth. And it just, I put the value of my house versus my mortgage. So it includes everything. But just watching that now every month. And one thing that I keep track of is like liquid cash. Like, because I think I was getting to a point where, like I said, we had all this retirement savings,
No liquid.
but no, like, but if like a $4,000, repair came, I would have probably had to put it on a credit card. And I hated that feeling with all, like it didn't make sense. Like you said, on the numbers, oh my God, how can I be worth $2.5 million and not be able to fix something at the house? Right. So,
Right. Yeah. Why
um,
don't we have cash stored up?
right.
Yeah.
So that is like an extra line, which is like all of the liquid, that includes like, cause I've started a brokerage account now. I've started, a high yield savings account. And again, and it does dwindle throughout the year because that bonus still kind of goes, but at least now the bonus comes. And yes, that is kind of where we get a little extra vacation money or whatever. But more and more, like I'm getting to the end of the year now and having something left,
Having a
right?
cushion.
Having
Yeah.
a little cushion. My goal is every year to make that cushion bigger, right? But that's kind of been the focus. But I think forcing
And then
myself to look at it every month was so
is
important.
important. And I think what also probably is happening is then you're planning the money in the beginning of the month and not at the
Yes.
end, because at
Yes.
the end there's nothing we can
Yeah.
do at
Yes.
the end of
Well,
the
that's what
month.
I would do. Because I'm a queen of spreadsheets. Like I love spreadsheets. In fact, like I have like mugs that say, "Ooh, this calls for a spreadsheet." Like and that in my old job, I was a data analyst. I spent a ton of time doing a lot of things for corporate America on a lot of spreadsheets. But I used to joke, like I could track my expenses like till I was blue in the face. I knew exactly where it was all going at the end of the month. Like you said, at the end of the month,
End of the month.
but not having that like, oh wait, we really need to keep it in check.
Yeah, we really rather it go here, and those decisions have to
Yes.
be made in the beginning or when the bonus
Yes.
is hitting. It has to be made like,
Yes.
okay, the bonus is here. How do
Exactly.
we want it allocated versus you
Yes.
getting the bonus and then it already having been spent?
Right.
So you'll also have a nice gap when the juniors in college, your twins, when they
Hmm.
graduate, you'll have a gap where you won't have to cash flow 100,000.
Yes.
That'll be a
Yes.
very big financial change.
Yes. And hopefully some of that obviously has to go towards the youngest,
The youngest.
making sure that we have funded his college before he gets there. That's going to be a bulk of that. We're also hoping. I mean, look, I will say the other part of this discussion, and I hope this maybe resonates with somebody. The thing about being a stay-at-home mom is like kind of all my eggs are in my husband's career basket. So I think like there is that part of me that's like, how much, and even he's thinking, how much longer does he want to work at this level?
Right, because when you make that amount of money, there's a lot of pressure.
Right. And I think in our minds, we're like, hopefully he can do this job or a similar job for at least the next 5 years, get to the point of our youngest getting to college.
Getting
And
into college, yeah.
right. And neither of us, I mean, our ideal world, neither of us wants to sit around and do nothing at 62. And my husband's even said the same thing, like this kind of like transition to retirement, right? And where he could just take a lesser job, maybe do some teaching or some consulting.
Less pressure.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for as well. Like I'd like to try to find something I can do on a part-time basis or full-time when I want it, but
Right.
more flexible, especially since we don't think we'll stay in New York. I think I mentioned to you.
A lower cost of
Yeah, I
living.
mean, we're here because of that
Okay.
job. If we have no family here. I don't think our kids will come back to
Okay.
this area. So I keep joking with my kids, like whoever lives in the warmest, cheapest place,
We're
I'll
gonna go
I'll
there.
come live
We'll
with
follow.
them.
Yeah.
We'll see. We just don't know where that's going to lead us. So we kind of have. It is kind of hard to plan for retirement when there are so many unknowns. But I think there's just
But you can,
flexibility.
you have great social security because your husband both of you have great Social Security. So if you were to wait till 70, not to
Right.
say that you do, but let's say you transition to like what I will call less pressure jobs in your
Hmm.
60s, and you do
Right.
something where you're making some income, but you enjoy it.
Yes.
And you're deferring to Social Security because you don't necessarily need it. Because I'm not a big believer in taking it just to put it in the bank because
Right.
you're paying taxes and you're taking
Right.
a reduction on the benefit.
Right.
Also, as a household, I always like the idea of deferring one,
Right. Yep.
and so your
That's kind of the
husband,
plan, I think. Yep.
yeah, and not to say that, you can run analysis on it. It's not to say that that always is the best decision, but Social Security for a married couple is $1 million decision. People don't think about
Right.
it
Right.
from that standpoint. And people are like, oh, well, what if you die young? And it's like, yeah, but financial planners, we don't talk about dying young because that's not a
Right.
problem. If you die
No.
young, there's no problem,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's longevity that's
That's the problem.
the
Right.
problem.
Yes.
And we want longevity. We want everybody to have a nice, comfortable retirement, but financial planners plan for longevity. And
Right.
so when you're planning for longevity, the Social Security decision really is $1 million decision between a household. So to give the listeners the numbers, if your husband defers till 70, his benefit gross is 5,000 a month. And if you were to defer yours, which not to say you want to both defer, because maybe staggered would be the most beneficial, where you collect yours a bit earlier so we get one benefit going and defer his, because the higher benefit stays with the household. So if
Right.
your husband predeceased you, you would swap up. But your benefit's 3,800. So combined, we're talking about almost nine, and that's today's value because
Right.
you'll get those
It
less.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's almost $9,000 a month right there.
Right. Right.
And every listener would be like, it's not going to be there. And it's like, yeah, well, then 67 million people have a problem.
Right. I
That's how
know.
many people are relying on this.
I know. I know.
It's a
And
big
we used
number.
to joke, I mean, because we've been hearing it's not going to be there since we started working. And that's why we put all this money into these 401ks is we were like, it's not going to be there. And you're right. Like, I hope, yeah,
It's our largest
it
entitlement program
is.
in
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
government.
Again, and watching again, I have, my dad just passed away. So I'm
Oh, I'm
now
sorry.
just in August. So I'm working with my mom on kind of all these things you're talking about. And, my husband's family, we do actually support some family members too.
Okay.
That's another part of the expenses that are in there. We do give, so because again, both sides of our family, most people are living on just their Social Security, which is hard.
Which is actually there's a lot of people that live just on Social Security, and that is not a comfortable retirement.
No, not at all.
That's not what you
No.
want. You want it to be. It could be a third. I always say it should be like three legs of a stool.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Your own savings. It could be a pension, or you replace that pension, which is then
Yes.
2/3 is you, and
Yeah.
then 1/3 is the Social Security. So
Right.
you don't have to have it, but it's super nice when someone sends you a check for
Exactly.
$5,000.
It was interesting because I did have a moment having been a stay-at-home mom where I all of a sudden was like, wait, do I even get Social Security? Like that's what actually, even before you asked me, I a couple of years ago when I was doing all this analysis, I was like, oh, phew, at least I've made enough money in life to
Yeah.
have it,
So
so
to have a fully vested benefit, you have to have 40 quarters, which is 10
yeah,
years. You have a lot more
yeah,
than that.
yeah.
And anything you do next will count.
Yes, yeah, I saw
Right.
that. So
Yeah. And then you're basically, your best option is either you choose 50% of your husband's, which based on the numbers you gave me is not higher,
right,
or your own work history. But because
yeah,
you have so much time in corporate America, your own work history is the better benefit.
right, yeah, that's what I see. So
Yeah. I love Social Security. I think it's fascinating. I think it'll be around. I think what will happen is there will be changes to it.
yes,
Like when people used to retire, 65 was full retirement. That's no longer the case.
right,
67 is your full retirement. It is very possible that they roll that back further.
right,
They're not going to tell us now,
no, exactly,
They do that when we get a little closer. And then
right,
the other thing is it's not fully taxable at this point federally. Only 85% is taxable.
right,
Percent. So like when you're talking about your family members, depends if your only income is Social Security, you could fall in the 0 or 50% taxation of Social Security. And
right,
so what they could do is tax it at 100%.
right,
And then the other thing that people don't know about Social Security is the Medicare portion of it.
right,
And so like when you're talking about your family members, they're paying the standard Medicare premiums. You and your husband are going to pay what's called an IRMA.
right. I haven't. What does that stand for?
IRMA.
Or
I don't know what it stands for. I have to
okay,
look it up. I'm just going to see if I have it on my cheat sheet here. I don't know if I have it. We do these. I get these cheat sheets because the numbers change every year.
Right.
the adjustments. So the Medicare IRMA means that like based on your income, you're going to pay more for your Medicare
Okay.
premiums,
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
and they can go up like a lot, like
Right.
significant. You could be paying $1,000. It's still, I still think Medicare is great. It's a federal program, so you could be visiting one child in one state and
Yes.
and
Exactly.
then go to
Yes.
another state, and there's no
Yes.
problem. You're not like out of network because you left the state or the
Right.
area. But as a high income earner in retirement, which just means you did a good job and you're not living on just Social Security or a small pension, your premiums are going to go up. And the reason they did that is for like when you're talking about your family and when they only have Social Security, they don't want those individuals' checks to go down every year as the
Right.
medical cost goes up. So they don't want the Medicare premiums to eat away at the Social Security benefit. So
Right.
they had this provision called the hold harmless provision, and it's for lower income earners. So if you only have Social Security, you would fall in that threshold. And so then what happens is for people that have more income in retirement, they offset the Medicare like, increases for the
Got it.
lower income earners.
Yeah.
So that's another part, like that's another piece, like when you're working with this woman, the
Yeah.
planner, is to talk about like where would our medical be, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
your medical is going to be a lot higher than your standard premiums because you'll have better income.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
That makes sense. And that comes out of if you do the traditional Medicare, which I'm a bigger fan of than like the private companies.
Yeah.
Because you've lived enough to know that
Yes. I
the
see it. Yeah.
it's cheaper if you go with
Mm-hmm.
a private insurance company. It's
Yeah.
just cheaper till you use it.
Right.
That's the
Exactly.
thing.
Yes.
And then
Exactly.
they get you on the back end when you really need it and you're in your 80s.
Right. Right.
With the traditional Medicare, it's important when you're planning your Social Security that like your husband's number is 5,000, but then if your premiums are coming in at like 400 or 500 per person, you want to plan
Right.
for that's a gross number, not a net number, and you're going
Yeah.
to hit
Exactly.
85% taxation. So that all comes into it. So there's like some stuff you can do with planning, just knowing like
Yes.
approximately, like okay, we know this number is going to hit at this time. We know we can pull from our retirement at this time. But I would agree with you and say that from now until you decide to take, I don't want to call them lesser jobs, but like I want to say less stressful jobs, where you're
Mm-hmm.
not at that income level, I would definitely focus on the non-retirement. I think that'll give you
Yes.
a
Right.
huge opportunity. Like in the perfect world, what I would say, like high level, would be if you focus on that for the next like 10 years,
Yes.
then what you could do when you guys, depending on what you're doing in your 60s, you could start converting some of the IRA money, doing
Yes.
Roth conversions, and put yourself
Yes.
in an artificially low bracket.
Right. Because we are not in a position to do that now as
No.
such a high earners.
Oh,
Right.
no.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
IRS is not going to send you a thank you
No.
card for paying
No.
at the top
Oh,
bracket.
trust me. Like that's one of my. That is. I mean, when I see my tax bill every year, it's very. And again, this is we're penalized for
Yeah.
making it. I mean, it's hot. I don't want to complain about it because I do believe in taxes and I know, but I'm constantly looking for ways to save, and there's not many for us.
No, they're not. And so like
No.
you're going to max out all your pre-tax that makes the most sense, and then you
No.
want to try to save as much as you can on the after tax. And then your opportunity is probably in your 60s, and that might be the reason you both defer Social Security is to have less income.
Right. Yes.
Depending on the situation, and that's just like a
Right.
tax strategy to say like, okay, we used to be in the 37% bracket, we're now in the 12 or 20.
Right.
So let's take out some of the money from the IRAs now and pay
Yes.
at a lesser bracket.
Yes.
We're going to save, 10% or 8% in
Right.
federal taxes. And those are all just projections you would run, but
Right.
that's kind of what.
And the tax code's kind of always changing. I mean, there's so much. I actually just heard the other day, and I don't know if you've heard much about this, but that there's this big problem with all this money sitting in retirement accounts that's not being spent. And that's where the RMDs came out. Like, I mean, I know that there is at some point, but
Well,
is
you
that
know
at
what
70?
they did? They rolled
Yeah.
back the RMD, but do you know what they stuck in there when they did
What's
that?
that? What's that?
They got rid of the stretch IRA.
Oh, okay.
The
What's that?
So the stretch IRA is how your kids inherit.
Oh, yes.
So
Okay.
they
Yes.
rolled back the RMD, and all the baby boomers were like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! I don't have to take any retirement money for 3 more years." Or
Right. Yes. Because now it's 70. Now it's 70, right?
it was 70 and a half, and then they rolled it back, so it's like 72, 73, or 75.
Okay.
they always kind of grandfather people in
Right.
to the
Okay. Yes.
original
Yeah.
rule. Generally, they grandfather and then they change it incrementally, just like they did with Social Security. It was 65. It didn't go 65, 67. It went 65, then it went 66, 66 and
Right.
a month. They just same thing with
Right.
the RMD. It was 70 and a half, and now it goes all the way out.
Okay.
And in that same retirement bill, they eliminated what's called the stretch IRA. And so what that used to be is if you inherit it from a relative, any relative, parent, aunt, uncle, and you inherited their IRA, which with the baby boom generation having accumulated a lot of
Yes.
assets, a ton of assets, and had pensions, right?
Yes. Exactly.
So didn't really spend it all. And I will say that the baby boomers generally are not like, not to say they're not all, but it was a little more common that they really worked really hard to get all that money there, and they just didn't spend it because of the
Right.
habits they created over those years, right?
Right.
They didn't
Right.
need it, so they didn't take it. They didn't go buy a new car. They stuck with the car in the same house, right? So
Exactly.
that account just grew and grew, and we had great
Right.
market returns. And so what happened before is if you left it to your kids, they would get it and they would have their own RMD, which was very, very low. It was called an inherited IRA. And that RMD would be based on age. And we have a uniform. This is like a
My
uniform.
gosh.
Yes, I know. And
Right.
so you could inherit it, and depending on your age, you could have to take 1.5% or 2% or 2.2%. It's not actually a percentage called a factor. But
Okay.
anyway, you only have to take a little bit out. And so if you have an account and it's making 8% and you take two,
Right. It's still going
it's
to
going
keep,
to
it's going to keep
grow.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't really have to take a real number until RMD, which it starts at like between 3% and 4% depending on the year.
Right.
So it's still
Right.
not a ton.
Huge amount. Right.
So basically, these retirement accounts were just going from baby boom to next gen or two generations below and still staying. Government doesn't like that because the only way they get paid is for you to
It's
take
a
a
take.
big
Yes.
distribution,
Yes.
2%.
Right.
And so what they did is they eliminated that. So now if you inherit from any sort of relative, other than a spouse, which is spouses usually same,
Yes.
not always, but usually same generation, you
Yeah.
have to take all the money out within 10 years.
10 years. That's what I thought. I knew it was that. I've heard that. I think I've probably heard it on podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can't save it for your own retirement.
Right. Okay.
And statistically speaking, not guaranteed, but if you're inheriting from a parent, you're going to be at your higher income earning years.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And so you're going to be taking 10% out of an IRA at potentially your highest income bracket.
That's gonna, yeah.
That didn't
Yeah.
make headlines anywhere. I kept being like, why
Right.
is nobody upset about this? This was like,
That's where, and I think I just heard someone say that there are some like bills in Congress right now to try to talk about a flat tax on IRA distributions, which at least, maybe would encourage more people to take the money out at a flat tax. Right.
yeah, and then they inherited, like, so, people come to me like, why don't my kids to pay taxes on my IRA if I pass away? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
At some
either you
point.
pay the taxes are on it,
Right.
or they
Yeah.
pay. And usually usually the best answer is to defer, right?
Right.
And not to incur a huge tax because it screws everything up in retirement, as we talked about with the medical. So yeah,
Right.
you can take all the money out of your IRA so your kids don't pay tax and have fun paying that Medicare premium. You
Right.
just put yourself through an
Self,
IRMA.
yes, exactly. Okay.
And
Yeah.
then there's property tax stuff that goes along too. As a senior citizen, you get property tax exemptions. So you say goodbye to that if you start liquidating your IRA, so you pay the taxes and there's just
Yeah.
this is the part where it gets a little more complicated in
Right.
retirement. It's like before you do this move, what is this move going
Yes.
to hit? Like where are we
Right.
gonna, have a domino fall down? Because you don't know that you screwed up your Medicare until
Right.
2 years later.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's so much to think about. It is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So anyway, not to scare you,
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, exactly.
that's a big thing with. That's why I do like if you can plan now, which is great, which is what you're doing. If you can plan now to say, okay, we're going to really focus on, we're going to get done with college, but we're also in the next 10 years with the youngest in college, we're going to really focus on saving non-retirement assets
Yes.
so that we have the opportunity, not to do all of it, but so that we can kind of convert more of this pre-tax money when we can control our tax situation by living
Right.
on the post-tax
Yes.
money we saved.
Exactly. And that's what I love about having this comprehensive plan that I just paid much less for. I did pay for it, but it's like you can pull the levers as you need to, right? And then see it all in one place, right? So it was definitely a good investment on my part. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fun part of financial planning, I
Right.
think.
Yeah. And it's gotten me, like I said, it's gotten me engaged and, more and to the point where I am kind of even thinking that there is like something in this industry for me to actually work with. I'd love, like I said, especially like the young kids. I love the idea of getting to people young, especially kids who maybe came from like an area like me who just don't have the knowledge, and to kind of, and I know there's so much content out there now, which is so great. And I'm constantly sending it to my kids. Like, it really, it doesn't have to be hard.
No, it
So,
doesn't have to be. And I think it's really interesting. And I also think, obviously, I feel very strongly about it. But the more educated you are, the better decisions you can make. And
yes,
finances impact every aspect of your life,
they do. They do, for sure.
every aspect.
And I'm seeing, like I said, I'm seeing it now with our older family members, like the ones without a nest egg or without that savings, or who didn't, it's so hard to watch it there, and they're having medical problems and they're not able to get the right amount of care, and or families are having to step in, family members are having to incur that. Like my husband and I are feeling that now, like this whole sandwich generation, like we are definitely
Yeah, where you
in
have
that.
kids and elderly
And elderly parents who aren't, we're not, I always hear those numbers about baby boomers hanging, sending all that money down to their kids. And I'm like, wait,
that's
we're
not me.
supposed to. So I had to make it myself, I guess. And which is fine.
Yeah, which is fine. And but
Yeah.
you're educated on it, and that will change. I mean, you've already done an amazing job with your finances. So,
Thank
and
you.
you're young, you know, you're from a retirement standpoint, you are,
Right. Right.
you know.
I'm so glad I'm looking at it now and not in 10 or 15 years. I
Yeah,
think
this is the
that's,
time to do it,
yeah.
because this is where you could set yourself up to say, okay, we're going to do Roth conversions for 5 years. We're going to
Right.
do, like, you can't, like, if you come to somebody like your lady that you're working with, you come to her at 65 and it's all pre-tax and
Yes.
there's no other options. There's not a lot she can do. I mean,
Right. Right.
if unless you say we're going to, we don't want to touch anything till RMD age, so you have some time, but you still don't have
Yes.
it's always better to plan, like anything else in life, putting
Yeah.
together a plan in advance. You can always tweak it and adjust
Yeah.
it, but if you don't have one,
Right.
it's hard to course correct,
Yeah. And
when
I
you're
do wish, like I said, even though you say I'm young, I feel like there's a part of me that's kicking myself for not being better 20 years ago. Like, I think that's the other kind of message is like, I can tell you, like, I beat myself up about so many decisions that we made. Like, at some point we did borrow. At one point we did take a loan against our 401k, to, help actually buy our house. But like, I wish I didn't have to do that, right? Because I didn't have those great savings habits. So I do just wish I had done it so much younger. Even though I know it looks like I'm sitting in a great spot, there's a part of me that's like, but I could have been so much better, or and I
But
know
I would
that's
say you
hard.
can always be better, but there's
I
also a
know,
part of life, like you can't control that, like
right,
when you went to sell your house, that it was the housing crisis, and that,
right,
there's a lot of variables you can't control. You can, like,
right,
do your best, and part about finance is learning, right? Like,
yes, yeah,
no one starts out amazing at
right,
personal finance, and it's because we're not taught. You are learning this on your own because you decided to get educated and take an active role. It's
right,
very different. Like, no one, very rarely do people get taught great personal finance habits in school and shown these examples. So I do
right,
think it's important to recognize that you've done a great job, and you're also now planning in advance for your retirement. Like, you're not showing up. There are a lot of people that show up and they're like, okay, so I'm 65, now what? And you're like,
right, yeah,
"Yeah."
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be. And I know I am extremely thankful for some of the decisions we did make. Like I said, even that financial advisor who I made it sound like it was a horrible decision, but at the end of the day, there was something about that. Like for 20 years, like that was money I didn't touch. You know what I mean? Because I have to say, like, even like calling her to like, most of it was retirement money. At some point, I had also put some after tax money there, and I wouldn't
You
call
do
her
have
for
to
it.
make,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
have to make a call, and there are questions, right? Like,
Right.
oh, okay, so
Exactly.
like, what did you need the money? Like, and it's
Yeah.
not to be mean, but our job
No.
is to check, right? Like,
Yes.
is this,
Yes.
like, really in line with what you've said you wanted? And like, let's
Right.
talk
Right.
about it, which is a level of accountability that if you're doing it yourself, which not everyone needs that, but if you're doing
Right.
it yourself, no one's asking. They're
Right.
like, okay, you want 20? Great. Okay, we're going to send 20,000.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
you just hit
Yeah.
a button versus having
Yes.
to call and the person's like, well, what's the 20,000 for?
Yeah.
I
Why? Yeah.
where was
There
the
was
money?
definitely some times like that where I was like, oh, I don't want to, and that's what allowed us to do some of the things that we were able to do. I, to some people, I would recommend it. Again, it's only as the assets grew that I kind of was like, oh my gosh, now look at how much they're making.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
And you took an interest in it, which I think is the
right.
other thing, right? Like
Yes.
if you were like, I still don't want to be involved, then
Right.
it's
And there are a lot of people who are like that. And that's a perfect,
yeah,
you
then
know,
it's an okay
yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
that's why there's all the firms that let you manage it yourself because a lot of people prefer that, and that's totally fine. That's where
right.
their choice is.
Yes, exactly.
But I think it's so important that you're taking an active role and then planning this out in advance because that'll make a big difference. And you don't know exactly what will happen with retirement, but you can kind of say, okay, like this is what we're really living on when you take away the
Yeah, and
expense.
that's what I've started to do. Like I said, I'm using expense tracking software now. I'm really getting serious about it and owning it, and owning where those expenses are going, and knowing that at any time, sometimes we do spend frivolously, but those are things that would go away if
Yeah,
they
and
needed
that's
to.
and that's okay. That's why you
Yeah,
work hard. But like, by the time you get to retirement, like you won't have a mortgage left, no car
right,
payments, no kids in college.
right,
Right.
exactly.
There's like a lot of things that go
Yes,
away.
yes, exactly.
And it's like, so like what do we, your husband and you like really need
Right.
a monthly number
Right. Yeah. And like I said, like right now, we're actually supporting some family members. We
members?
also, because all of our family is back in the Midwest, the ridiculous amount of, I could put it under travel and expense, but like we have this because we're going back and forth a lot to help
Okay.
take care of family members. And it's like not fun travel at all. And I'm like, this is a
No.
ridiculous number. But I just keep telling myself, that's the kind of
Yeah,
stuff
so
that won't go
probably when
away.
you looked at like what you and your husband need when
Yes, all is said and done because we
yeah,
don't drive. We don't. I mean, our house. We don't have. We. I mean, we definitely have less house than we could afford on that salary.
yeah.
We don't drive fancy. We have one fancy car, but not super fancy cars. And like, it's like we definitely still kind of have our Midwest values, and we don't
Yeah. I just
expend. Yeah.
yeah, you could I just like when you're going through the expenses, I could just take a guess that if it was just you and your husband, then the
Right.
house will be paid off and the cars will be paid off, right? And then you
Right.
relocate to a cheaper
Cheaper.
area,
Yes.
even
Exactly.
if it's neutral, like
Right.
you just take what you had on that house and put it into the next house. You still have no mortgage,
Yes. Right.
and then no college, and then you know less.
It does help to look at it that way because right now it feels really overwhelming. I think because I think of it as like trying to make what we're making now with our retirement savings. They take your spending and times it by 25 or whatever. And I'm like, we're nowhere near that.
But you
But
you won't
yeah,
be. I
right.
like you can't make any guarantees because we're not allowed to do that.
I
But
know.
having worked with thousands of people,
Thank you. That does make me feel better.
yeah, it just kids are expensive. Life is expensive right now, especially with going back and forth to the Midwest. You're getting taxed a lot. You're paying federal, state, and maybe
Yeah.
city. I don't know.
Not, no, not where we live, thankfully.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay. So you're paying two. So you're getting kind of hit in another state. Okay. So you're paying two state. Okay. So you're paying two state tax. So you're paying three taxes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so like you could end up in a state where there's like no state tax and you just have
right,
fed like and
right,
so like it's really it would come down to like what do you'll still have the cars, but the cars are paid off, right?
right,
And you'll still want to probably you're gonna want to have cash cushion, but it's then like okay, like what are you and your husband really like what does your lifestyle look like when
right,
all of that stuff goes away?
right, right. Oh, hard to imagine, but it's definitely easier for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a lot easier, it's just the two of you
Right,
versus, three kids
right.
and aging parents, right? And so I'll just take a shot in the dark. It's not you're not going to need 700,000.
Thank you. That's good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I could probably spend it if I made it, but I'm not going
You could
to.
yeah, you probably could. But like if
As
you
I've learned, I know how to spend it. Like
I would
that's the hard
say
part.
probably with Social Security being around 100,000, you're 9,000, 90, you're gonna have like over 100,000 Social Security grows. Probably in your accounts right now, I thought I think they're around 3 million total.
The retirement accounts are at like 2.5 because then there's like 500,000 in our house,
Yeah,
but
okay. So two and
like
a
two and a
half.
half.
So that goes to five right there, just like not touching that in 10 years, right? At
Right,
7.2% basic compounding. So even if you pulled 4% off in 10 years, that's 200,000. You could pull a little bit. So what you could do is pull a little bit more because
right,
Social Security is going to come in at 70 or somewhere around there and pull in 100. So
right,
you could take a little bit more like 250, 275, and then tone it down once the Social Security hits, give or take. Um, I bet you that number is probably pretty close to what you and your husband would be spending
Totally.
with
Totally.
no
Yeah.
mortgage, no car payment, no debt, and no
Right.
kids,
Right. For sure. Yeah.
right?
That
It'd
does
be like
help when you put it that way. Yeah.
yeah, like a gross of like 25 or 30,000 a month
Right.
in a lower tax environment.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have definitely made me feel better. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. Like at some point, it's just so crazy how the brain can be like it just feels like you need more. You know what I mean? And it's just scary. It's scary. So
Yeah, it's a mindset. I think when you get used to having that number on paper, right? Like well, this is what we get 700, we'll say 700,000 a year, that's what we live on.
right.
It's like, yeah, but no, you're actually not getting 700 at
No. Oh,
all.
I know that. I do know that just by
Yeah.
tracking net. I track net income in my expense tracker,
Yeah.
so I see how much we're not. I mean, so granted, a lot of that's going to into retirement, but that's the other thing
It's
people
not
bring up. Like, you don't have to put any more in at some point. And it's
no.
like if I think I look at how much because we are doing the after tax, so I think we're putting like $40,000 a year towards retirement right now. So
Right. So
yeah,
then just that and the college is there's 150.
right,
Which means three almost probably close to 300 to net that, give or
right,
take. You're like 250.
right,
Yeah, so I mean, I honestly think with your accounts, if they just double and then you pull 200 and then you start that at, you decide like in, 60, 10 years, 63 and 66, and then maybe do something part-time before that or part-time to supplement that. And then you have Social Security coming in at 100 grand. Yeah. But
you make
it's
me
a
feel
it's a
better. Thank you.
mindset
It
shift. You
is
have to, because like it is really hard. Everyone always wants to have the same income in retirement, and not to say you don't want to take a pay cut, but
right,
people don't realize how much farther the dollar is stretched when you're just paying federal.
right,
Like it's and maybe you have state, but maybe you live in a state that's a flat state, like it's just
right,
4%,
exactly,
not
right,
an incremental. And maybe there's a capital gains rate in that state. Like in New York State, there's no capital gains rate,
right,
so it's great if it's 15 or 20 for the feds, but you're going to pay ordinary income on your capital gains in New York.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it. But I would say I would like to see what you and your husband need. Like what do we need when we get there and we're empty
Right.
nesters and we have no debt and you don't need 700, I doubt it. You're just not spending it on yourselves.
No, we're definitely not right now. No,
Yeah.
definitely not. Yeah.
So yeah, I know I think you're in a great spot. But part of that is getting comfortable with like the mindset shift of like we're in a good spot, we've done a good job and acknowledging that because you have, like, trust me, we have a lot of people that come on the show where I don't have a lot to say.
Right, right. I know. And I I recognize my privilege there too. I think there's also like and I think one of the things I said to you about almost being embarrassed to come onto the show. Like there was like
Yeah,
I want to say it was almost like an embarrassment. Like like here I am like, again, came from nothing. All I wanted was to be able to be secure and make money. And then now I almost feel bad that we make money. Like, do you know what I
right.
mean? Like that sounds
You set yourself up for that. That was the goal at 21. This is
right,
almost 30 years later.
right, right,
This didn't You didn't
right,
step in it. You didn't hit the
right,
lottery.
right,
You made
exactly.
very conscious decisions and conscious sacrifices to put yourself in the situation that you set out at 21 to be in.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about. What I will
Thank
tell you that I find very interesting is when you wrote in you were nervous to come on the show. What I
you.
will
Hmm.
tell you is I knew that your finances were fine because you were, because it kind of aligns more with somebody who did a good job but doesn't think they did good enough. And what I will say is not necessarily textbook always the case, but often people will come on and as I start the conversation, we start unraveling all these issues and I don't even know about them, but they're not super worried about it,
Right,
which
right,
makes sense because I mean that's how they're living with all the debt because they're
right,
not super worried about it. So I almost
right.
knew when you said you were nervous to come on, it can go both ways, but more than likely I was like it's probably all fine because
Thank
you
you.
also didn't say I have a boat or a horse, which
No,
usually aligns
right,
with.
right. And I will say, like, just to, I guess, for your listeners' perspective, like, I went through those phases. Like, as I just said, like, I went through the whole game. Like, I spent a lot of probably, especially in that time period after we moved from the Midwest to New York. where I was like, going with the 0% interest and transferring credit card debt and carrying credit card debt that I didn't want to carry. I kind of got into that mess a little bit, which is again some of the shame of thinking, well, I could be so much better off, right? But thankfully we were working and we were making good incomes, you know what I mean? And we're able to kind of dig ourselves out of that. So that is probably some of it too, is I think that's part of that feeling of now that I finally have got myself to a point where we're not, I pay off whatever debt we accumulate. Yeah. So I've been there, done that kind of. And it's amazing to me that I can still be in a good spot, even with a lot of those mistakes.
Yeah,
I
but
think it's a lesson.
that's life. And I always say on the podcast, there's going to be periods of time where everything is going really swimmingly and you're doing a great job, and there's going to be periods of life that are expensive
Yeah.
or where like it's just not going as well, and that's okay. It's always about just recalibrating and
Right.
getting back on it. And
Right.
when you start at 21, you
Right.
have a lot of room for
Yeah.
error.
Yes.
You can have a few years where you weren't as disciplined, and
Right.
that's okay because you started at 21, and that's why I always encourage people to start young, because then if there's this period of life where it gets really expensive and you can't focus as much and it's not going as well, it doesn't derail the overall plan because
Right.
there's so much time.
Yes, and not touching it. I think
And
even
that's
though I did say we did at one point take a small loan, but like when I hear of people taking withdrawals from their 401k or borrowing against it, for whatever other reasons, it just like that's the one thing I think we didn't do. And now it does help to be able to see that. So I think if that's another lesson, I think for people is,
Yeah, you always want to protect that because pulling out of those accounts, I always say it isn't 20,000, because if you
no.
compound it, it's like a $200,000
Oh
loan.
yeah, and then add the 10% penalty on top of that. Like I just like yeah, thankfully, like I said, the one time we withdrew, it was a loan and we paid back. We did pay it back, and and thankfully, I think from a market perspective, we did it at a decent time. It just felt a little bit better there.
Yeah, but I think you did a great job, and I think you're totally fine for retirement. It's just about tweaking it. It's about
Right.
how to be
And
consistent.
yeah, and then now I think the other part of me, which is probably just my personality, is the what if. The what if my husband loses his job, or what if. But I think I've even gotten better with that. Like
If your
I
husband
just know
lost
we'd be
his,
okay.
yeah,
I
you would
know.
be because you have enough saved in retirement.
Right. Right.
Like, so no matter what, like, so then maybe instead of living on 300,000 in
Right.
10 years,
Right.
you live on 200.
Right. Right.
And you just have to come up with the expenses in the middle, right? So
Right.
you have
Exactly.
to, so maybe for the next 10 years, if he were to lose his job, you both get a job, you do something and he does something, and then,
Right.
yeah, but I
Yes,
completely
exactly. And that's kind of the what, because again, spreadsheets are my thing, analysis is my thing. I finally have got, because I think when I first left the workforce, and this is maybe something else, like that was really hard. I kept joking, like I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. And that was really hard for me as someone, like I said, who was the breadwinner, I am educated. I spent all the, time on my education. That was hard. But what I've kind of done as well, I would do this, or I'd do this, or we'd tweak this, or we'd, spend less here, or what, I just know that there are ways.
I also think the risk of being a stay-at-home parent or putting all your eggs in your partner's basket is when you are not involved in the finances. I think that's a
Right.
double whammy where you
Yeah.
like don't know what your
Right.
spouse is making, and you don't know where the money's going, and you don't know what you have, and you're not involved, because then
Right.
you're not really a stakeholder.
Right.
And
I
so
actually
then,
laughed that my husband would be actually the one that would be in trouble, because I don't know that he knows as much. I mean, he does. I have like purposely tried to keep him in the loop, but he literally is like, whatever, just, make sure.
yeah, because I think that's where women get in trouble,
I do.
because
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
all of a sudden then like the marriage isn't going well, but they have no idea what the husband is making or where the money is, or and then maybe they think they're in a good financial position, and then they find out as they're getting divorced, which is a traumatic event, that there's also no money, that they didn't
Right.
know that there was no
Right.
money.
Right.
So like I think being an active stakeholder in your finances is critical, right?
For sure. For
And
sure.
so
Yes.
I think that's the difference. And if you acknowledge like, hey, we're going to be a team, and like we're going to support your career,
Right.
and but I'm also going to be involved in our finances and those decisions, I think that's the key, in my
Right.
opinion. I
Yes.
think when you put your head in the sand on that and he just does it all, he's better at it. It's like, yeah, but it's also your financial life too.
Right. Yes. And I would say I'm almost the opposite. Like sometimes I feel that that's where some of my guilt comes from, because I always have been the one in charge of it all. Like there is also, it's almost the opposite. I feel guilty sometimes that I haven't done better, right? Like I feel like, you know what I mean? So you've helped with that today. So thank you.
Well, good. Yeah. I think you've done a great job. And I just like that you're involved in I mean, I think that's the key, that you're involved in your finances. Um, and then your poor husband doesn't know. You're like, here, if anything ever happens to me, log in here.
I've like at least started like to do, like I've started to keep that list somewhere. I really have, because he
So
would
he's
be in
not
big trouble.
completely out
No,
of the loop if God forbid you.
he just knows that that credit card gets paid every month. You know,
Not
he's
sure how.
like, yeah, he's literally like the opposite. So, which
The
is
opposite.
great. I mean, we have a great relationship, and we've been together over 30 years. So,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
Well, good. This was super interesting. I appreciate you coming on the show to chat with me
Well, thank you
about
for
your,
having me. Thank
yeah,
you.
this was great for hopefully all of our listeners. I really enjoyed this. For everyone, you can find our most up-to-date information on Instagram, which is Future Rich Podcast. And if you'd like to be a guest, we will be recording again in May, and you can apply at www.futurerichpodcast.com. And as always, if you like the show, the best thing you can do is share it. So thank you. Okay. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.